How can I begin to talk to you about my people and my kin? Why do you despise me, so quick to criticize me, and yet you call yourselves the victims? The fall of Western man is a looming fate for the Western lands. The time we have at hand is running out. Diversity means nothing more than replacing us at the very core. If you don't believe me, put the TV on. We'll soon be gone. You're a racist, is what they said to me. You know your hate is nothing but bigotry. You know you're nothing more than an evil white supremacist, is what they said. So tell me, how does love for my own kind equate to hatred towards another? It's only natural that bluebirds fly with other bluebirds, is what he said. So get your head out from in the sand and look around. Is this the world our fathers gave their lives to defend? We have responsibility. We all share the duty to keep the children safe from harm and protect them. The rise of Western man relies on the faith of the Western lands. So keep your spirits high and don't give up. 'Cause it's not too late, we still have time. We can make things right, we can turn this round. We will once again live life the wholesome way, the traditional way. But we need to remember who we are and be proud of the things we've achieved this far. We have to carry on the legacy of our people. For we believe in nature and beauty and innovation and creativity. A strong society has a strong foundation in the family. How can I begin to talk to you when you refuse to even listen?
There we are. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching the show. My name is Chief Moody, and welcome to episode 92 of the Mood of the Nation podcast. I hope everyone is doing fine and dandy, especially for this being the Thursday afternoon. And this will also be the second part in the Betrayal of Our White Girls or White Children episode I've decided to do back on Sunday, I think it was. So last episode was part one. That was with Joe Marsh, who I know is in the chat. How you doing, Joe? Thanks very much for watching the show. So that was that, and it was a big success. Of course, everyone enjoyed that. So part two is basically me. What I was originally going to do was actually cover a lot more of the articles about it. And once I've covered all of that, I'll probably move on to something else, but we'll definitely see with that. So again, just like with the previous episode, I know some people might be a bit black-pilled of the subject, which I could definitely understand because of the whole of what's really meant to be about. But there is a bit of a hopefully like a bit like a sense of hope towards the end of it. But we'll get to that much later on towards the end of the show. So I got everything I need for the articles to cover and all of that. The whole point of this, more specifically this part, is again just to bring awareness to the overall situation with the grooming gang scandal. Now, thankfully, there are people that are still talking about it to this day, but it's a very small amount of people. I think the more of this gets out there, the more this is being talked about, then hopefully more people will definitely see it. So that's really the main purpose of this. There is one thing I also want to mention as well as like for me about a reaction to the previous episode. So I understand that the overall subject matter, and this is all, what I'm even going to say as well is also like a bit of an apology. Now, last week, the last episode I did, episode 91 or part one of the Betrayal of Our White Children episode. There was a part there in that episode where I mentioned about, say, donating. So, you know, basically the whole idea of if you want to donate to me, then of course the links are down below. Looking back at that episode when I said that, I kind of felt like it was a bit out of taste, mainly because of the subject matter that was being presented in that episode and also in today's episode. So I was a bit kind of annoyed at myself, but I was a bit worried about everyone else might have took it that way. I just want to make myself perfectly clear that was not the intention when it comes to that. So I do apologize for that. I really did not want it to come off as like I was what's the word, like asking for donations while I was talking about a very serious subject matter, like of course the grooming gang scandal. So I do apologize about that, and of course in the future, if I were to cover a specific topic in a future video, I won't do that in the near future. It's just for me, like looking back on it, it was like, was it really necessary to maybe bring that up, especially for a subject matter like this? So again, I do apologize, and I'll never do that again, especially when covering a subject matter like as dark and serious as this. So just thought I would put that out there just now with that. So. And that being said, we're 9 minutes into the episode already. I also say as well, depending on how I get into the articles today, I think that there's maybe I've already covered a couple of them with Joe on the previous episode, but I think there may be not a lot to go over. So, well, again, depending on how it all gets done, because I don't think I might want to do the episode maybe up to the full 2 hours or something like that. But again, it just depends on how we get on with the episode. We'll definitely see with that. Joe Marsh, real quick, how you doing, Joe? It doesn't stop Tommy asking for money. I wouldn't worry, mate. That's fine. Fair enough. I just thought it's just again when I was watching it back, I kind of felt like it was a bit kind of again a little bit out of taste for asking for money. Obviously when I was going over like a very sensitive subject matter as that. So, but I just thought I would maybe bring it up as well with that in this case. The drag queen protests are good examples of direct action not involving violence on our side. Oh no, good point. And actually, I really have I really want to take my hat off to people, especially people within PA, who've gone around the country protesting this absolute degenerate filth. And of course, with a lot of good results out of it. And again, there was no violence being involved. There was no threats of violence or anything like that at all. Those were actual peaceful protests that occurred. And of course, many of the events that were going to be held, but they were now cancelled because of the backlash. Which again, great stuff. And all these lefty douchebags. There was a stream I watched earlier on. I think it was Jodie who shared it on her Telegram page. I watched it for a little bit because I had to stop because there was just a lot of like just cringe-worthy material from both sides. Both sides, I mean, say the lefties who are there because they just want to come off as progressive and whatnot, and the other side of it being the SIPNAT types who are who are actually going over the PA leaflet, and they're talked about, like PA is a fascist organization that promotes fascist conspiracy theories, and it's like, fuck off. It's all the same stuff with that. English Rose is with us. How you doing, English Rose? Chief Marie, you have covered this with sensitivity and forethought. You have nothing to reproach yourself for. Again, that's fair enough. I appreciate the comments with that. So that's what just kind of came off to me when I was watching back on that episode. I was like, was it? I don't know. I think that was maybe it was kind of like in poor taste in my opinion with that, but. If people were okay with that, then okay, that's fine. No worries with that. So, anyways, what Tyler 1381? How you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. There's also Kingdom of Villain. How you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. Let me see here. I was getting a sandwich. I've read that comment already. That's fair enough. Appalachian Nationalist, how you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. We also have Ragnar Ironspear with us. How you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. Sam's Thoughts, how you doing? Thanks very much for watching the show. DJ Cuts, how you doing? Thanks very much for watching the show. Kenny Hinney is with us. Also, we have Bill Athling. How you doing, Bill? Thank you very much for watching the show. Steve Insidious, how you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. Roscoe is with us. How you doing, Roscoe? Thank you very much for watching the show. And lastly, Jacob J, who writes, probably won't be able to watch the stream today, so I just wanted to pop in and say hi. Well, hello to you too, Jacob. And thank you very much for appearing in the chat earlier on. Thank you very much for that. Right then. Okay, I think we might get started on today's topic. Now, again, depending on how we go over this, it might be a bit shorter than usual, maybe a bit long. Well, maybe not long. I'll definitely make sure it will get up to like the 2-hour mark, and maybe up to that, maybe a bit shorter, but I'm not entirely too sure. My throat's a little bit off today, so that's why I got my water bottle with me just in case. Gizzy Stripe is one in the chat with us. How you doing, Gizzy? Thank you very much for watching the show. Greatly appreciate you being here. Right then, let's get started. Got the first article up and running here, so let's have a look at this, and I will share the screen as well. Let me see here. Just get this up here ready. Let me see here. It should be like that. Okay, this is the article. This is the original article that English Rose has sent me through Telegram, which again, I want to thank them for that. So let's have a look at this. This is from spikeonline.com. Grooming gangs, the making of a national scandal, how the British state turned a blind eye to the rape of thousands of children. I'm sure many of you have already read or looked through this article already. In fact, this article is actually a fairly recent article. This was the 17th of July of this year. So, all right, fair enough. Let's have a look at this. The report into grooming gangs in Telford in the West Midlands, published some time ago, told an all too familiar story. Groups of men of largely Pakistani heritage sexually abused young girls for years, while the authorities, fearful of appearing racist, did absolutely nothing. This ought to shame the nation. Over and over again, we have seen the same story unfold. Local councils and police forces, paralyzed by the forces of political correctness and identity politics, have failed spectacularly to protect the children and young people in their care. Well, I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's more of resentment towards the white working class girls, mainly because they're class, and of course mostly because they're white, or in the race in this case. As I mentioned on the previous episode, and many times I've mentioned, about this particular subject matter before, the perpetrators who committed these horrible acts, especially towards the white working class girls, they target them specifically on their race because they're white, and they targeted them was mainly because they were looked at as easy meat. This raises urgent questions. How did we get here? What is the true scale of the problem? And what can be done to tackle it? So, of course, we get to Rotherham. Rotherham, a large market town in South Yorkshire, is at the heart of the grooming gang scandal. In 2012, the Times revealed that a confidential 2010 police report had warned that vast numbers of police were being sexually exploited in South Yorkshire each year by organised networks of men, largely of Pakistani heritage. South Yorkshire police and local child protection agencies were shown to have knowledge of widespread organised child sexual abuse, and yet they had failed to act on that knowledge. Rotherham Borough Council, South Yorkshire Police, and other agencies responded by setting up a child sexual exploitation, or the CSE, team to investigate the reports. In 2013, an independent inquiry led by Professor Alexis J. was launched. Her subsequent report into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, published in 2014, which I think I still do have the article as well. By the way, I just want to make that real clear. We'll have a look at that after this article, and then we'll see from there. We'll kind of do it in a maybe not like almost like a reverse chronological order, but we'll have a look at that after this. Made for horrific reading. It found that at least 1,400 children had been subjected to sexual abuse between 1997 and 2013. Jay detailed how girls as young as 11 had been raped, trafficked, abducted, beaten, and intimidated by men predominantly of Pakistani heritage. She was also deeply critical of the institutional failures that had allowed organized child sexual abuse to flourish in Rotherham. She concluded that there had been blatant collective failures on the part, firstly, of the local council, which consistently downplayed the scale of the problem, and secondly, on the part of South Yorkshire Police, which failed to prioritize investigating the abuse allegations. Indeed, the J report found that the police had regarded many child victims with contempt. The inquiry discovered cases involving children who had been doused in petrol and threatened with being set alight, threatened with guns, made to witness brutally violent rapes, and threatened they would be next if they told anyone. One young person told the inquiry that gang rape was a normal part of growing up in Rotherham. That's just fucking brutal, man. And not only that, but another thing I've also heard about, I'm not too sure if it was in Rotherham or it was other places like Telford or anywhere like that. But when all this was going on and the police and the council knew about this, they did. From what I've heard, they definitely did downplay it, and of course, said that the girls who were participating in these horrible acts against their will, by the way, they were branded as sluts within the community. Never mind the fact that they were like the young age of 11, 12, 13, or 14, whatever age that would may be. It really goes to show the full scale of what these girls have went through, and just how the amount of what this article would say, downplay that's being used towards this horrible incident. I mean, it can't really be that bad, because it's like, no, it was awful. It was really bad, and one of the reasons why the police and the council didn't do anything about it was because, again, the majority of the perpetrators themselves were mainly Pakistani or of Pakistani heritage, and they didn't want to be looked at as racist. So there we go. Continuing on from there, the J report also took the local authorities to ask for elevating concerns about the racial sensitivities over the protection of the children in their care. As the J report put it, several council staff described their nervousness about identifying the ethnic origins of perpetrators for fear of being thought as racist. Even I just mentioned that already. Others remembered clear direction from their managers not to do so. Rotherham was not an isolated case, of course, but the time of the J report, men had been prosecuted in other potential instances of organized grooming. Of organized grooming in places like Keighley from 2005 to 2013, Blackburn 2007, 2008, and 2009, Rochdale 2 cases in 2010, and Oxford in 2013. The cases all bear striking similarities. The mainly Pakistani heritage perpetrators, the vulnerable young victims usually in care, and in each case, as later reports were to reveal, the authorities had been afraid to tackle the abuse for fear, effectively, of being called racist. Again, I've already mentioned that already, but it's very true with that. A lot of the police and the council and the care workers, all these other agencies, either were afraid to be called racist, or let's be honest here, just didn't really give a damn, because there was a lot of resentment for white working class girls within those areas, which again really goes to show the length of what we're dealing with here in terms of all of these agencies that claim to give a damn about the girls in care, but really they don't. They don't really give a damn about them. What I also want to do is just want to have a quick look here in the chat. I don't want to come back onto the original page. What I'll do is I'll have a look at the chat through my phone. I think that's a bit of an easier way to do that. Let me have a look and see here. Also noticed 31 people watching the show, which is really good. Rigor Mortis is in the chat. How you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. Greatly appreciate it. How's Dak? How you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show. Kitchen Skillet is with us. How you doing? Thank you very much for watching. Anglo-Saxon is with us. How you doing? Thank you very much for watching. And that's really it at the moment. That's fine. I hope the lighting is also coming in well, because I know the previous episode, I don't know how this happened, but later on in the episode, for people who've missed it, it wasn't even like dark outside, but of course it got to the point where it was starting to get a little bit dim, and you can really see that in the camera that of course the camera quality wasn't really up to par, and it was getting a lot more darker as it went along. But anyway, I think windows are open, so there shouldn't really be any issues with the lighting whatsoever. But again, we'll wait and see with that. So let's have a look at this part here. Operation Augusta. In 2020, an independent review concluded that dozens of teenage girls thought to have been groomed and sexually abused in Manchester by groups of largely Pakistani. Sorry, just one sec. Sorry, here we go. Largely Pakistani men had been failed. Failed by police and officials. The review revealed that the authorities feared that an in-depth investigation would destabilize race relations in Manchester. Yeah, so of course, this was another thing I remember when I was looking into this as well. There was all these talks about, well, yes, I mean, we want to mention that the perpetrators were of these ethnic origins, but we just don't want to create any racial tensions within the community. It's like, it's why do you care about that? It's just only stating an observation of what's really happening. The majority of the perpetrators, and sure, not all the perpetrators were Pakistani heritage, but the vast majority of them were, and the vast majority of the victims, as I remembered, 97% of them were white or from white working class backgrounds. I mean, again, it's just stating a fact of what's going on with this overall case. But no, we can't really say anything more about it because we don't want to create any racial tensions within those communities. Right, okay then. All right then. The report, co-authored by Malcolm Newsom, a childcare expert, and Gary Ridgway, a former Cambridgeshire police detective superintendent, suggested that Greater Manchester Police and Manchester City Council effectively sidelined an investigation into grooming gangs due to sensitive community issues and concerns over the risk of inciting racial hatred. There we go. Much of the report is focused on an Operation Augusta, which was set up in 2004 after the death of 15-year-old Victoria. I hope I don't butcher this name. Agoglia. I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't pronounce that right, my apologies for that. She died in 2003, 2 months after reporting that an older man had sexually assaulted her and injected her with heroin. Augusta subsequently identified at least 57 victims, mainly white girls aged between 12 to 16, and some 97 potential suspects, mainly of Pakistani origin, across the Greater Manchester region. However, senior officers at Greater Manchester Police deprived the investigation of resources before shutting it down completely. With the support of Manchester City Council, only 3 people were convicted in court. The report suggested that police officers were keen not to be seen targeting another minority group after they had recently dealt with cases involving members of the local Kurdish population. Margaret Oliver, a retired detective who worked on Operation Augusta, is now set on exposing the institutional failures over grooming gangs, has publicly stated that Augusta was prematurely closed down. Oliver said that the intelligence team on Augusta had discovered an organized group of offenders, a coordinated intergenerational group in which younger men were tasked with the responsibility of picking up young girls and befriending them before passing the children on to be abused at sex parties by older men. Yet Greater Manchester Police preferred to look the other way. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It really is just absolutely sickening. And I think I know this is not like an original point to me. I know there's a lot of people who would make this point in the past, but I think there definitely should be an open investigation on the people who have either sidelined this overall case or have looked the other way, or even pretty much all the people who have uh, did absolutely nothing to protect the girls and, of course, arresting the perpetrators. I think those people should be looked into severely because of that. Because I think there is clearly I don't want to say like a, well, would you call it treachery towards young girls? Because this is almost in a way like a small. Again, I don't want to call it like a small scale like war crime, but it definitely comes off almost like a war crime in this case. Sure, many people were not killed or anything like that at all that we know of, but the fact that these men of Pakistani heritage, the vast majority of them focused on white working class girls and calling them easy meat, and even referring to their race and whatnot. I would say that you can maybe consider that almost like a war crime. I mean, imagine if it was the other way around. I mean, again, you would never hear the end of it. You'd never hear the end of it. If it was a group of white men targeting specifically Pakistani girls, I mean, again, you would never hear the end of it. Not that I would advocate for anything like that at all. I mean, of course, that would be horrible and wrong. Nobody should ever groom any child for any regard to that. Again, this just goes to show. This is only just the first article, by the way. This only goes to show of what we're dealing with here regarding to your current society, where the police, the councils, these agencies, all the people involved in this did absolutely nothing and let the girls suffer because they didn't want it to be viewed as racist, or because they have complete contempt over the more specifically the white working class people within those areas. Let's have a look here. Should really have a mouse here with it, but this might be a bit better. But anyway, offender A. The authorities in Greater Manchester have been cast in an especially grim light by the unfolding grooming gang scandal. In June this year, an independent review into historical child sexual exploitation in Oldham was found once again that vulnerable children had been failed by the very agencies tasked with their protection. The report contained some particular harrowing details. Chief among them was the revelation that the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang, Shabir Ahmed, I think I might have even mentioned that before, but anyway, we'll continue on from there. Worked as a welfare rights officer with Oldham Council. in 2005. Despite already having been accused of child sexual abuse, the police failed to notify the council of the prior allegations made against him. Ahmed is referred to as offender A in the report, and Ahmed was second to the Oldham Pakistani Community Center. The death of the sexual abuse the details of the sexual abuse are horrifying. One survivor, Sam, was attacked by a total of 8 men during a 24-hour period and raped on multiple occasions. At the age of just 12, the review concluded that both Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police failed in their duties to protect her. Their subsequent denials created the impression that both agencies were more concerned about covering up that failures than acknowledging the harm that had been done to the vulnerable young person. This is about Telford, and I wonder if there's anything with this as well. So, yeah, okay, let's have a look at this. Telford. Last week's report, again, this was ran on the 17th of July. I think that's about 11 days ago. But anyway, last week's report into grooming gangs in Telford revealed that obvious evidence of child sexual exploitation was ignored for generations, leading to more than 1,000 girls being abused. The Telford inquiry had been set up after the Sunday Mirror revealed in 2018 that gangs had been abusing girls in the town since the 1980s. The inquiry found that child protection agencies had blamed children for the sexual abuse they suffered. Rather than the perpetrators, it showed that there was a reluctance to investigate grooming gangs because of nervousness about race and the fear of inflaming racial tensions. And it discovered that the agencies in question had dismissed reports of child exploitation as child prostitution. Jesus Christ. I know I've read something like this before, but again, like it's mind-boggling like how all the police, all the council members, all the agency workers and all of that can just brush that to the side and say, oh, well, this is just child prostitution. Well, they're basically calling them sluts, as I mentioned earlier on, despite the fact, as I mentioned again, they were about 11, 12, or 13, or however young they were. And of course, this is all against their will. We should also mention. It's disgusting, absolutely just sickening. What I want to do now is I want to see if I can maybe get to the 2014 article. Now, I'm pretty sure I have this in my notes here for this episode. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, so this is from the BBC. This was 26th of August 2014. Rotherham child abuse scandal. 1,400 children exploited. Reports fine. Now, I don't think I'm actually going to go over this article because again, I did everything that's covered in this article was already mentioned in the article I just read out earlier on. Not that I'm finished with the article itself, but again, just have a look at this. Let's have a look in a moment here. Perfect experiences. I wonder if maybe this is a video. We can have a look at this video real quick. Well, actually, what we'll do first is read through the part on top of it, and then we'll move on to the video itself. So let's have a look at this analysis. So James Vincent from BBC at Look North. The scale of this report is simply staggering, and some of the detail extremely hard to read. It lays out how Rotherham Council and the police knew about the level of child sexual exploitation in the town, but didn't do anything about it. They either didn't believe that what they were being told, played it down, or were too nervous to act. The failures, the report says, are blatant. The report's estimated 1,400 children were sexually exploited over 16 years, with one young person telling the report's author that gang rape was a usual part of growing up in Rotherham. The processes for dealing with these crimes had got better in the last 4 years, but still improvements need to be made. There were more apologies from the council today, but the report's author says they were too late. Yeah, they definitely were too late to give an apology now after that. Speaking about her abuser, Isabel said, I think because the police were aware and social services were aware, and he knew that they still didn't stop him. I think it encouraged him. It almost became like a game to him. He was untouchable. Speaking after the publication of the report, Victims Commissioner Baroness Newlove said, "I'm appalled by the extent of the horrific abuse endured by these vulnerable victims. It's deeply distressing how the authorities failed to protect these young people, and their voices were never heard. Everyone involved needs to take responsibility for the shocking failings that fail I can't even speak tonight, sorry. Failings that this report has exposed. This must not happen again." I agree with that. Definitely agree with that. This was a complete massive scandal that even this baroness was like you guys fucked up. You know, all the police, the council members, the authority figures, and all of that, the agency workers, you lot have fucked up beyond belief here. Well, this isn't like just a mistake. This was a huge, colossal fuck up on their part regarding to that. I want to see another quote from them. "I want to see every one of these victims getting the right support now and for as long as it takes them to help them on the path to recovery." You see, well, that's again another fucked up thing about this. From what I've heard about this overall case, some of the victims have coped and moved on with their lives, and of course having getting married and having children and whatnot. But then there's some victims who are still traumatized to this very day and probably can never recover from what happened to them. Because they had such horrific abuse being thrown at them to the point where they probably will never be recovered after what happened to them. Which again, it's horrible, and I think no one should ever go through that in any way, shape, or form. As I said earlier on, anyone who was involved with this case and turned a blind eye or did nothing whatsoever, those people should be looked into, prosecuted, and be thrown into prison because of this. The lack of responsibility from these people is astonishingly bad. Maggie Atkinson, Children's Commissioner for England, said the number of identified child victims was largely consistent with the findings of their own national inquiry into child sexual exploitation in gangs and groups. Horrific experiences. Rotherham Council's Chief Executive Martin Kimber said he accepted the report and the recommendations made and apologized to the victims of abuse. Now, this is a video of Martin Kimber, so we'll have a look at this just now, and then we'll move on from there with that.
It's with great regret that we are here today to discuss this independent inquiry, which explains how Rotherham Borough Council failed in its duty to support and protect our young people in the early and mid-2000s from what must be one of the most horrific forms of abuse imaginable. There cannot be a person involved in child protection services, either past or present, who could fail to be distressed by the accounts of what happened to our young people that are contained within the independent inquiry. No one in the council today finds it acceptable or excusable that this happened. The sexual exploitation of young people is a horrendous crime carried out by perpetrators intent on causing harm. We all have a responsibility to protect our young people from these predators. But it's clear from today's report that we, the council, and other agencies that work with us failed in that duty for a significant period of time. For this, I am deeply sorry, and I offer my sincere apologies to the young people who have suffered such horrific abuse, and also to their families for the devastation this will have caused. Today is about making sure those young people have their voices heard. Many were courageous enough to recount their horrific experiences as part of the independent inquiry to help to ensure that others who may be at risk today in Rotherham and other parts of the country can be better protected. I can only commend and admire their bravery. I hope the publication of the report and my response to it will go some way to help to reassure victims that this deplorable situation will never be allowed to happen again.
There we are. I've just seen a comment in the chat by James Andrew Morrison. How you doing, James? Thank you very much for watching the show. They write, he is sincerely sorry that he got caught. Yeah, that's what kind of, well, not kind of, what definitely comes off as. I mean, the thing is with that, these people can apologize all they want, and we should have done better and all this and that. It's like, well, yeah, you should have done better, and what are you going to do about it now? I mean, the only thing they've really done after this, which is, again, just giving apologies like left, right, and center, and not actually giving out proper justice. Arrest the perpetrators who committed these horrible acts, and also prosecute the people who turned the blind eye against this. But we never really get to see that. Because there's a lot of contempt within our own people, a lot of contempt towards the white working class girls. So it's a shame, but that's just really the reality of it all in this case. And I think if there is a good thing out of this, if there is one good thing that is coming out of this, a lot of people are definitely speaking out about this, whether it be content creators who live stream about it or make videos about it, or even going out in the street and doing proper activism. It's definitely been more talked about at this point in time. And I definitely think a lot more people definitely needs to talk about this. I know it might be a subject matter that a lot of people are not comfortable with, but I mean, it's a harsh reality that people need to face at this point, especially what we're going to be dealing with here. Because I would imagine in the next few years from now, because of the anti-white sentiment we're dealing with at this current time, if you think it's bad at what happened with these children in places like Rotherham and Telford and all of that, if you think that's bad, just wait until the next few years when it's probably going to be even more worse than what happened during these cases. I mean, these cases, as read out, were going on since the 1980s. I mean, that's like what, like 2, 3, maybe almost 4 decades ago. And yet, you could even say it's still going on to this very day. I mean, it's shocking. It really is absolutely shocking that. Let me have a look here and see. Is there more to this article? I think we could just move on from this article, and then we'll go back onto the Spike.com article. I think where I was the last time, if I remember correctly, if I can get this up here in a moment. Telford. I think I was here, if I'm not mistaken, the Telford Inquirer. No, I did read that. Sorry, my bad. I'll go here, right. The report also references the horrifying case of Lucy Lowe in 2000. So that was, of course, 22 years ago. 16-year-old Lowe, her 17-year-old sister, and their mom were killed in a fire started by 26-year-old Azhar Ali Mahmood, the father of Lowe's 1-year-old daughter. Lowe was pregnant with Mahmood's second child when she died. He was jailed for life in October of 2001. He has never been prosecuted for any child sexual abuse crimes. This part here is where we get to time for action, and it's absolutely pouring it down. Sorry, folks. Just want to check my camera real quick. Is it still... I mean, it's not bad, but I think... I think it's just like the rain that's kind of making it kind of very gritty looking type of thing. But Roy Herbert's in the chat. Hello, Roy. Thank you very much for watching. Chief Woody, Katie Fanning was talking about how she was groomed between the age of 13 to 16. Oh, shit. I did not know that. That's quite a bombshell. I did not know that. I mean, it's horrible that happened. I'm sure like she's she's recovered from that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I can check out the video itself after this, but actually, let me see if I can maybe find that video. I'm assuming, Rory, if you don't mind me saying, is this on her Telegram? Because maybe we can have a look at that and then we'll see from there. Because that's the first for me. I did not know the fact that she was groomed or anything like that at all. Or maybe this was streamed on another channel at some point. I don't know. Martin, you knew that girl. All right, I see this. Toby Radley, I got chucked out of a meeting earlier. I can't keep the rage in anymore. I think I'm losing that. Oh dear. James, when the police won't help, when the social services and politicians tell you to let people rip your child, you take the law into your own hands and damn the consequences. I mean, I don't agree with the idea of taking the law into your own hands, but that being said, I can understand why people will go to that length. Because again, if you can't get help from anyone, say the police or politicians or anyone like that, I can understand why people would go to that length of actually taking the law to their own hands at that point. And of course, screw the consequences afterwards. I can understand that, especially for something like this, where their children are being victims of this. Folks, if you could just bear with me just now, I'm going to see if I can maybe get a light on, because again, it's not bad, but it's just the quality of the camera. But again, it's just it makes it look really gritty. Bear with me just a moment. I'm going to see if I can move my light across. 1 second. Of course, you can still hear me talking while I get my light. I hope the sounds are coming through when it comes to the rain. That's really pouring it down. Oh, damn. 1 second. Let's see here. Get that right. Maybe I should have moved this earlier on, but again, I didn't think the lighting would be that bad, but still. All right, let's see this. Maybe I can move that here. So let's see here. Hopefully this will work. Well, I hope. Move that across here. Right, let's try that. I think that might be a bit. Yeah, that's a bit better. Perfect. Right, hopefully that should be okay for the rest of the show. Excellent. So we got that sorted out. Let's have a look at this. Right, what else is being said in the chat? Tim Willis, how you doing? How you doing, Tim? Kate also confined this during an interview with an American channel on her Telegram. All right, let's see. What to do is maybe I'll have a look at that later on, because that's literally like news to me. I did not know that about Katie Fanning or Paris. So I'll definitely have a look into that later on, and then we'll see with that. So cozy, well, it's not supposed to be cozy, but I mean, it's better than nothing, I would say. So let me see here. A lot of people are saying that saying that Katie was a grooming victim, or asking it, was she a grooming victim? I mean, that's literally, as I said, sorry for my apologies for something I'm repeating myself here, but that's literally like news to me with that. Yeah, do get Kate on. I don't know if she'll be available now, but maybe in the near future, if there's a demand for having Katie on as a guest, then I'll see if I can come up with something with that. I'm sure she wouldn't mind coming on anyway, but we'll see, and we'll see with that in the future. So, but that will be, I don't know if maybe an interesting conversation, but anyway, let's have a look at this further. Let me see here. Right, okay, that's fine. Sorry, just gonna have a quick sip of my water again, and then we'll continue on with that. I don't think we've got much left with that current article by Spike.com anyway. I think we've got that. There might be something else, another article maybe to go over, but again, it just depends, because I think some of them I've already covered with Joe on the previous episode. So if it's not that, there is a video. I'm not going to mention who it's from, because you all know exactly where it's definitely going to be going. But There's a couple of segments we can have a look into. We're not going to cover like the whole video. I think it's about like an hour and a half long or something like that. But again, we'll only have a look through snippets here and there, but we'll see with that. So. Oh, definitely do arrange it. Would be awesome. All right, fair enough. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with maybe having her on at some point in the near future. Maybe on the next episode or the episode after that. Again, we'll see with that. We'll definitely shall see. I actually don't know if she knows about the show or anything like that at all. I mean, I did see her one time at the Autumn conference last year, I think it was, in Kendall. This was after her appearance on PA Talk. I think it was maybe on the second episode of PA Talk. I recognized her because I saw her on that. So I'm like, oh, that's that Paris Lassie. I don't think she knew who I was because this was before I was before I was doxxed by Hope No Hate and all of that. So she would I guess she would see me as like an average Joe type of guy just at the conference, but I don't know. Maybe she might recognize me on the appearance. I'm not entirely too sure, but we'll definitely see with that. We definitely shall see with that. Let me have a look and see if we can continue on from. Yeah, I think there's maybe one last part of it, and then we'll see with that. Do your thing, Chief. Will be there. Well, thank you very much, Toby. Kate is incredible. She's erudite and has an almost inhuman determination. Yeah, I agree, and I definitely agree with that. Let's see. Okay, let's have a look at this. Amanda Lee is in the chat with us. How you doing, Amanda? Thank you very much for watching the show. I should maybe have this light more often, actually, now I think of it. Yeah, especially towards later on in the year when it gets a lot darker. That would be pretty ideal. Right then, let's have a look at this. Let me get back onto sharing the screen and we'll finish off this article. Anyway, I think it's the last part here, but it's called Time for Action. This crisis can be ignored no longer. Politicians need to lead from the front. They need to show some moral and political gumption. To this end, the government should instruct all police forces and local councils to collect specific data disaggregated by socio-demographic characteristics, such as ethnicity and sex, for all cases of known or suspected child sexual exploitation. That is not happening at the moment. Indeed, it was recently reported that South Yorkshire police have still been failing to routinely record the ethnic background of child sexual abuse suspects. Indeed, suspect ethnicity was missing in 67% of cases recorded by South Yorkshire police. This is an unacceptable state of affairs, given the significance of ethnicity in the grooming gangs scandal. Too often, politically correct identitarianism is getting in the way of protecting young, vulnerable members of the public. The Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, or the IICSA, published a report earlier this year into sexual exploitation by organised networks in Tower Hamlets, Bristol, Swansea, Durham, St Helens, and Warwickshire. The IICSA expressed serious concern about the high number of at-risk children placed in unsupervised, unregulated accommodation. These placements in unregulated accommodation can help 16 and 17-year-olds become independent, but some of these placements are temporary or in isolated settings, such as mobile homes, barges, caravans, and hostels. The level of supervision in such settings can vary, and support can be limited at best, which puts vulnerable socially isolated teenagers at risk of predatory groups. The authorities clearly need to think far more carefully about where they are placing young people, specifically if they are at high risk of sexual exploitation. And it is possible to identify who is particular might be at high risk of sexual exploitation. A high proportion of the grooming gang cases investigated by the IICSA involve children with disabilities. It found that more than 1 in 3 sexually exploited children had complex disabilities or neurodevelopmental disorders. These risk factors have been well known for some time. Back in 2016, Home Office research found that children with disabilities are at a high risk of sexual violence and are more vulnerable to grooming and exploitation. Indeed, children who are deaf or have a physical disability are considered to be 3 times more likely to experience abuse than those without a disability. Local councils and police forces should tighten their risk assessment procedures when dealing with those in their care. One of the makers of the civilized and compassionate society is the extent to which its public institutions prioritize the safety of its most vulnerable citizens. But when it comes to tackling child sexual exploitation, Britain is failing spectacularly. A toxic mixture of racial identity politics and victim blaming tendencies among the authorities have left vulnerable children, many of whom have experienced family breakdown, parental neglect, and domestic violence, exposed to child sexual abuse and exploitation. Our public institutions have a duty of care. Right now, they are failing to fulfill it. Yeah, absolutely true. And that's the end of that article. So, great article. And again, that was sent to me by English Rose. Again, thank you very much, English Rose, for sending me this article in the first place. They miss the biggest risk factor, which is bring white or being white. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Being white, of course. Yeah. That's a major factor. In fact, again, as we mentioned before, the majority of the victims of these cases were, of course, white girls, which is, again, massively, massively horrible. And again, people need true justice to be brought for them, and true justice needs to be brought towards the perpetrators and the people who have neglected this case because because they didn't want to create racial tensions, or they didn't want to be called a racist and all of that. So yeah, again, it's not the end of this topic as of yet. I know we're approaching 6 o'clock already. I actually cannot believe it's been an hour already with that. I want to have a look and see the other cover that. So didn't need that anymore. Cover this one. I don't really need that anymore. Covered them too because I covered them with Joe in the previous episode. So there is one article here, but I don't think I'll cover that too much because I have read it a little bit before the show started. It does come off as a little bit Civ natty in my opinion, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Again, I'm not going to cover the whole article, maybe just a little bit of it. Let's have a look at this. This is from the christianconcern.com. This article was written on the 31st of July, 2020, so just a shy of 2 years, not too long ago. So it does cover stuff like 500,000 victims in 40 years. It even reads, Dr. Hill estimates that there have been as many as 500,000 predominantly white victims of grooming gangs over the last 40 years. That's a hell of a lot. That's a hell of a lot. This is believable. The Independent reported that almost 19,000 children were identified as victims of sexual exploitation in 2018 and 2019, which is again, that's quite damning, that, because even I remembered, just mention this real quick. I gave a speech at the recent PA conference back in spring, and I even mentioned that in my speech about 19,000 British children being victims of sexual exploitation between the years of 2018 and 2019. I did mention that in my speech. So it's definitely true, especially during that time, 19,000 within a span of a year or almost 2 years. That's shocking. That's absolutely just appalling. Absolutely. I mean, what other words can you really say to describe it in this case? It's more than awful. It's more than horrible. It's just downright evil, isn't it? I mentioned that on the previous episode as well, but it's true. It's absolutely just pure evil. What these perpetrators and what the agency workers and the police and all of that just not bother helping the girls whatsoever, or maybe even the boys if they've been victims of it. Like more specifically, like majority white children being victims of this. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. We know that Sarah Champion, MP for Rotherham, once claimed that there could be as many as 1 million victims, at the very least over 40 years across the whole country in multiple towns. The total number of victims is likely to be in the hundreds of thousands. And of course, I mentioned that racially and religiously aggravated. Dr. Hill defines a grooming gang crime as a racially and religiously aggravated group or network-based rape. She was targeted in her late teens over 20 years ago by a Pakistani Muslim gang in Rotherham. She was raped, beaten, tortured, strangled, and almost drowned to death, and almost suffocated to death. She was trapped like this for over a year, almost of which time she was covered in bruises. The gang threatened to kill her parents and to kill her. She survived an attempted honor killing, which left her hospitalized for a week. At that point, the police advised her parents to move her which they did. When being abused, Dr. Hill was reportedly referred to as a white slag, white whore, white cunt. Her whiteness was continually emphasized. This is clearly racially aggravated. Her abusers would also claim that they were allowed to abuse her according to Islamic teaching. I have explained before how the Quran and the Islamic teaching can be used to justify grooming gang types of crimes. Current police, this is what they said in the article, not me, of course. Current police guidelines do not allow whites or non-whites to count as or non-Muslims, to count as a protected group. It is not possible, according to this, to commit a hate crime against a white person. Wait a minute. It is not possible, according to this, to commit a hate crime against a white person. Well, there you go. They even said it themselves. You can commit a hate crime towards non-whites, but if an actual white person reports a hate crime, then that's preposterous. How can you commit a hate crime towards white people? That's just patently absurd to these lefty types. But against a white person, there are no hate crime statistics for anti-white or anti-Western crimes. Yeah, to them there might be, but our community can definitely showcase that. Yeah, there actually a lot of anti-white hatred going on. In fact, of course, mentioned this on the show before. PA has their own memorial section for white people who've been victims of this multiculturalism experiment. So I would definitely check that out for everyone to see. Again, I might come off as very blackpilling, but again, it's something that people need to see for themselves and see the scale of what this anti-white society we're living in just now, just how bad it is at this current time. The police said there was nothing we can do. Actually, was this from... yeah, this would be from the video in question. Hold on a minute. Did I share it? I did not share. Well, I mean, I did read it out technically in this case, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play you a video that talks about this. I think the woman in question is actually in this very video. Now, let me get the video up first of all, because I think there might be a collective groan if I put this video on, because the people who uploaded this interview, I'll get this up here in a moment, I'll even share the screen as well. What's the timestamp that starts off with that? 10:20, right? 1 second here.
Moment for people to think about that.
Oh, heard that. 1 second. I forgot to get my earphones in with this. Hold on. 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Hold on a minute. Start off with that. Right, let me share the screen. And again, I know there's going to be a bit of a collective groan who the channel is from, but it's called, the video was titled, I Am a Grooming Gang Survivor, My Story. And yes, it is from the Trigonometry, who are a couple of Sipnat bundles of sticks. But I think it's important to use this video because, again, the survivor in the video her story of what she mentions, I know technically I've already read this out already, but I think it's important to get it from her perspective, because her story is just absolutely just heartbreaking to hear. So what we'll do is I'll full screen that, and we'll listen to her story, and maybe pauses here and there to give my take on the whole thing with this, but we'll have a look at this together. So anyway, ignore the fact it's from trigonometry, but we'll have a look at this together. So 3, 2, 1.
Well, a lot of it's to do with race and religion, which a lot of people don't really like talking about, and they don't like to hear it. But this is why I feel compelled to talk about what's happened and what is still happening, because people need to hear it from survivors that these are racially and religiously aggravated crimes. That when I was being beaten, I was being called a white slag, a white whore, a white cunt. That over and over again, the references to my whiteness was always at the forefront of my perpetrator's mind, and that was always linked in with religion and his idea of what a good Muslim was and a bad non-Muslim was, or a good believer and a bad unbeliever. Even though I was a Christian, even though I have my faith in God, I pray, I believe in heaven and hell, I believe in good and bad, good and evil. So, but in the minds of these grooming gangs, if you're not covered down to your ankles, down to your wrists, if the hem of your top doesn't cover to your knees, then you're asking to be raped. Or, if you're not washing in the way that you should wash as a Muslim, if you're eating pork, you're unclean, you're dirty. If you use a knife and fork, you're dirty. If you don't eat your food with your hands, sounds like I couldn't never quite understand that. It's the opposite way around. But so there's lots of narratives within these grooming gangs which make hatred of white people a justification for what they're doing. And also scriptural things like, we're allowed to do this, we're permitted to do this to you once you've started your periods. So we can't do it to you. And before you've started your periods, we have to do thighing, which is another type of sexual molestation, which doesn't involve penetration.
Okay. So, I mean, it's just a lot to take in, what you've just explained.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you before the interview started and correct me if I'm wrong, that the police don't see this as a race crime or a race-based crime. Could you explain, maybe if I'm wrong, if I am, and just go into it a little bit further?
How the police have been trained for a long time is to preserve interracial relations, to not raise any racial hatred, to not accuse people of doing something in the name of religion which could cause anti-Muslim prejudice or anti-Islamic prejudice. So this is the way that police have been trained for a long, long time, years and years and years. So they're looking at it from completely the wrong way around. They're looking at it from the perpetrator's perspective rather than from the victim's perspective, where a victim has been a victim of identity-based violence, where they've been attacked because of their race and they've been attacked because of their religious status, which is a non-Muslim or Christian or Sikh or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever it is that the perpetrators feel is the religious justification for that person deserving punishment.
Wow. And so it's simply they refuse to acknowledge it as a race-based crime, even though you've given them evidence of it, even though the part of the reason they committed these unspeakably awful acts upon you was because the fact that you were white, and therefore they felt emboldened and empowered to do that because...
Sorry, I just want to pause it there. Like, again, I know that what she's saying is coming from what I've already read. And even then, like, just hearing from her perspective, I mean, there's more to what she says later on in this video, but it's already just completely heartbreaking. And I, with the fact that it's definitely a racial and religious motivated sexual assaults with that, calling her like, I'm not going to repeat what I've already said and already what she said in this video, but again, it's just absolutely just heartbreaking, isn't it? I think that the people who commit these horrible acts to these girls definitely need to be thrown in prison, or maybe bring back the death penalty, if I dare say. I don't think there should be anything controversial about bringing back the death penalty, especially if you're someone who commits a heinous act towards a child. I think you should be severely punished for that. I don't see how that could be a controversial statement to say. I mean, I think a lot of people would back me up on that. I'm sure people in the chat might back me up on that as well. I mean, I think if anyone harms a child in any way, shape, or form, they should be punished severely for that. And if a child comes up to you and says, you know, oh, this man or this person or woman or this person did this to me, then that accusation should be viewed as gospel, because as a child that's making an accusation, and the child would never, you know, lie about anything like that at all. Yes, some people would say there's an argument to be made of, well, sometimes depending on the situation, the parent or the other parent or the other adult might groom them to saying that, or might teach them to be saying stuff like that, which that makes it kind of murky when it comes to that in this case. But I think besides that, if a child comes up to you and says, this person did this to me, then that person, the person who is alleged to what has been alleged by the child should be viewed as gospel, regardless of the seriousness or anything like that at all. We need the ultimate penalty. I agree. Yes, death penalty is not controversial. Japan still has it. Very civilized society. Do they actually still have it to this very day? I mean, I was a bit surprised of a case that happened maybe not too long ago, which I was like, wait, does Japan still have the death penalty over there? That's quite surprising. But, well, there you go. Japan still has it, then I don't see why we can't have it. So, especially for those who commit heinous acts towards children. What I'll do is I'll just continue on from there, because, again, there's a lot more to say with this woman. Yeah, they do it in Japan, right. There's a lot more said what the woman says here, so we'll continue on from there. So 3, 2, 1.
And they still won't.
No, I think the way that the system has been set up, it has been set up to have protected groups, and white people and non-Muslim people are not a protected group according to these are current police guidelines for hate crimes. So there's certain protected groups like Muslims, immigrants, refugees, Jews.
I'm fine then.
Trans. You're safe.
I'm safe.
You're safe, Constantine.
Yeah, of course you'd be safe to death. But as soon as she said like Jews were like a protected class, he was like, "Oh, I'm safe." Well, yeah, of course you'd be fucking safe.
Yes, I'm trans. I'm coming out on this particular episode of the
show. And you're a minority as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Mixed race.
Mixed race?
Yeah, half Latin American.
He's gammon, look at
yeah, it's all gammon. This is 100% pure Brexit.
I think you're both cancelled by now.
Just seeing the chat from Streaky Bacon, you'll be fine, small hat. You would be fine, yeah. And also, inshallah, Streaky Bacon, how you doing? Thank you very much for watching the show.
I don't know if you're still protected. I'm not sure.
But I get your point. There's lots of groups that are protected under this categorization, but white people are not. And you're saying that's current guidelines.
There's current guidelines.
So let me put it very pointedly to you. If what happened to you was to happen to another young woman today, and she went to the police and said, "This is what's happening to me. And I think it's because I'm white." They would still behave in a similar way.
Some police forces, they would not record that as a hate crime. But in some police forces, I mean, people think, Met Police is the whole of the UK. It isn't. That's just one police force. And there's, I think it's 23 or 25 different police forces all over the UK. And they all have different management structures and training systems. It's all overseen by the College of Policing, but there's a slightly different culture in each part.
It's a good point, Johnny Pal MBE. Thank you very much for watching the show. I mean, like this is my problem when it comes to these particular channels like trigonometry, like being Sipnas and whatnot, is that they don't really take the subject matter of this extent too seriously, especially that fucking skinny prick who was like, "Oh, well, I'll be safe because I'm Jewish." You get? It's like, yeah, obviously they're not going to really either. They don't understand, or they just don't really care too much about the overall subject matter. Again, this is the problem with SIPNAS, is that they're not really conservative or want to bring in traditional values or anything like that at all. They're basically liberals who just hate either the authoritarian left or just hate Muslims. And I think this whole entire case is them just trying to use it as a way to garner this idea that Muslims are the problem of what the right is dealing with here. Despite the fact you could make the argument that they're only just a symptom of the problem, and we nationalists want to actually tackle the real problem rather than the symptom of the problem, and that real problem being the actual people who are bringing these foreigners into westernized countries. And who are those groups of people? Why, I would say someone like this gentleman right here, who admitted on this episode on this show that he's safe for being Jewish. So might be a bit of a claim to make, but I mean, there's a lot of evidence to back up that claim. So there we go. Let me just get back to where I was with that. So and even they use it for clicks, utter cunts. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't that wouldn't be a surprising factor with that, to be quite honest. But continue on from there.
Policing, but there's a slightly different culture in each part of the country. So some of them probably are recording anti-white hate crimes now, but looking at last year's hate crime statistics, there was none. We haven't got any hate crime statistics for anti-white hate crime. We haven't got any hate crime statistics for anti-Western hate crime. And I would say that when we talk about anti-Western hate crime, anti-white hate crime, we need to include the anti-Western as well, because now we are getting, well, we always have had the brown people who are being attacked for being too white. So they're being called coconuts, they're being called Uncle Toms, the black people who don't fit in with the specific cultural belief of what they should be for being black, according to certain groups.
You've just described every ethnic minority guest on trigonometry, as you know, pretty much. So, well, look, I want to balance this up a little bit, just in terms of, I want people to know about you, which I know about you, that you're not someone who's driven by antipathy towards other groups of people, even Muslims, which frankly, you'd be forgiven for, even if it's not accurate to say that this is all Muslims. People, I think, would understand if you had some kind of antipathy, but you don't, which is incredible to me.
Not at all. I mean, for my Christian faith, my very strong belief is love your enemy. So love your enemy, bless those who curse you, and do good to those who spitefully use you. So that is what I fall back on again and again. And it's been a chosen decision that, these people who have made me their enemy, or they are my enemy, they're attacking me, and they're identifying me as an enemy that they have to harm. I will not hate them. I will not hate all Muslims, not at all. In fact, I will love them. I will make a determined.
Sorry, just real quick, Gamma Sandwich and Resisting the Lies. Are you doing Resisting the Lies or DJ? Yeah, I think it's in this very clip that skinny fucker actually does say that. I'm not too sure what the timestamp of that would be, but it would be. I think that everything that's been said so far in this overall interview, and then he goes off to say that, well, white people shouldn't collectivize. Yeah, it's a very slimy thing. I hopefully it might be around this part. I'm not too sure, but if someone in the chat knows what we're referring to, maybe can give an actual timestamp for that video. That would be much appreciated. But yeah, I try to look for that as well. But because I had a feeling it's in this very interview where he says that, like, oh, white people, white people white children are being the majority victims of these crimes, but white people shouldn't get together as a collective. They should be individuals, and I'm sure that's all turned out really well for them. But anyway, so look that further.
Women choice to love them, and for them to be my friends, and for me to cook meals for my friends, and take care of them, look after them, check on their kids, their families, everything.
Yeah, thought so. Yeah,
I will not be driven to hate anybody because of their colour of their skin, or their background, or their race or religion, age, gender, sexuality. That I think is really part of my faith,
which is incredible.
I mean, it's so powerful. The fact that it's considering the extremities of your experiences, the fact that you would then make a concerted effort to make that choice is, it's phenomenal, really.
It's been quite easy, I have to say, because I've met some absolutely wonderful people, like in my career, training as a doctor, through medical school, through working in hospitals, just absolutely fantastic. Like my friends, there's Nepalese, Thai, Chinese, Lebanese, Iraqi, Indian, Sri Lankan. These are my close best friends that I've had for years and years. So it hasn't been hard to love them at all, to be fair. And my Pakistani friends as well. The main charity that I support is the Pakistani. It's in Pakistan. It's a Christian charity, and that's through my friends in the church. But for me, it gives me peace to love people, no matter what.
I mean, it's just like I'm sorry. I mean, like, bless her heart. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, she's a victim of this horrible crime that happened to her. She's a survivor, which I'm glad she's a survivor. It's just all this fucking shit about like, oh, I've got non-white friends and I'm supporting a charity for this organization for the Pakistani community. It's like, why? Like, you've went through like hell and back, and then it's like, again, it's all part of this overall white doctrine, isn't it? It's like, well, even though all these horrible things have happened to me or my loved ones, but I can't get together as a collective with white people and say, white people have a right to exist and have a right to self-determination and all of that. I can't do that. I need to be still an individual and say that, well, not all of them are bad. Which, look, no one's denying the fact that not all of them are the same. Not all of them are bad. But it's very clear that this whole multiculturalism experiment, this diversity experiment, just doesn't work. It clearly does not work. And these people need to be returned home. They need to go back. She feels guilty. I mean, like, I don't want to say she feels guilty, but it's kind of coming off as that, but I hope not. Oh, God, the I'm not racist argument. Yeah, I know, right? I can't forgive a lot, but you do that that to a child, never. Yeah, you never do that to a child, never. I'm not a racist bollocks. I know. Let's just say 25% of them are bad, and that's still millions in the UK. Yeah, it's truly sad. It is. Yeah, it really is sad because it's like she has to. I don't know whether or not. If this is a theory I have with this video. I don't know whether or not if she truly believes that, or maybe this is them. Before they had the interview started, they were like, well, we'll just say this and say that, and then maybe you'll be fine at the end of that, or something to that effect. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that really were to be the case, where she said to her, look, listen, even though you've went through a lot of horrible things, what has happened to you, but just say you've got these types of friends, and you're part of this charity organization and all of that. That might help you to not make it look as bad as what people might come off as in this case, or something to that effect. Stockholm syndrome, yeah, from Dan did not. Yeah, good point with that. It does kind of come off as Stockholm syndrome-esque with what she said in this interview, but. Don't get me wrong, I don't blame her. She's a victim. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she is definitely a victim. Yeah. But.
Gives me peace. So when I see like this Black Lives Movement, and I see a lot of the people on the streets, and they've got injustice, and injustice is.
Sorry, real quick from Gamma Sandwich. A great point from Gamma Sandwich. Maybe not all browns are bad, but how do I tell the difference at first glance? Safer to avoid all of them. Yeah, again, a very valid point. I agree with that.
Horrible, and racism is horrible. To be a victim of any kind of identity-based violence is devastating, and if it's been perpetuated through generation after generation, or it's been ingrained in your schooling, or you've experienced it on the street throughout years, that is awful. It's very traumatizing, and it can be compacted by lots of historical things as well. So I do think identity-based violence is terrible. But for these Black Lives Matter people to go through the streets chanting, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace, what I'm seeing is a perpetuation of no peace. And the only way that the justice has been offered to them is through what appears to be revenge at the moment.
You're absolutely right. The reason I bring up this point is I think, let's just be straight about it. A lot of people feel that the issue of identity has become very toxic, and you know this. And a lot of people feel, and this is because, of course, as I think you'd agree, identity politics for minorities has now pushed a lot of people into a corner where some people are starting to go, well, what about my identity as a straight white man or whatever it might be, or a straight white woman or whatever. And so to talk about anti-white hate crime, to a lot of people that triggers their inner alarm bells of you're in dangerous waters here. And a lot of people now confuse the sort of thing that you're talking about, which, you know, based on the way that you describe it, is undoubtedly an anti-white or anti-Western hate crime. They confuse.
Yeah, I mean, well, it definitely is. Again, the perpetrators, not even just with the grooming gang scandal, there's a much bigger extent cases with this. Another example I can come up with would be Chris Donald. Look what happened to him. I mean, and even Chris Donald, before he died, he asked the perpetrators of that, you know, why me? I'm only a 15-year-old boy. And when they were questioned afterwards, they even said they killed him because he was white. So there's clearly anti-white violence going on. There's clearly anti-white hatred going on within white communities. But again, it's not really been taken as seriously because that's all part of the overall plan of just completely fucking eradicating this.
Use a complaint about that, which is perfectly legitimate, with an attempt to smear people, with an attempt to attack minorities, with an attempt to be racist. And in one of your previous interviews, you talked about the fact that even your parents were worried about speaking out and getting justice and getting you out of that horrific situation because your parents were worried. They're still worried about being called racist. Now, I just ask everybody who's listening to this or everybody who's watching this to imagine that this is happening to your child. And the concern you have about being called racist is so strong that it gets in the way of you protecting your child. How terrified must you be? What kind of culture you must live in to be so scared about that?
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I mean, nobody is safe. Victims are not safe. It's been a safeguarding disaster, I would say. The fact that we're not being protected from being falsely accused of being racist, Nazis, fascists, gammon.
I like you said that to me.
I did look at you when I said that.
And also you directed the enemy.
You're laughing during a serious topic. I actually can't fucking stand these two. They're I prefer to call them Hoddit and Doddit, especially this guy here who just he kind of reminds me of what's that British guy who's in America, like a TV host, like a comedian, bollocks, what's his name again? But he just kind of comes off to me like a rejected member of the Beatles, or he looks like who's that fucking British comedian in America? He's like a TV host at the moment. He's got glasses. He's got like I don't know if you want to call it gimpish teeth or something like that, but what's his name? Is it John Oliver or something like that? Wait a minute, let me check on Let me check on this real quick. John Oliver. Let's see here. Yeah, John Oliver. Yeah. So this guy right here. Yeah, John Oliver. I was thinking of. So this guy right here kind of reminds me of John Oliver, but if John Oliver had Down syndrome, I don't know why. Might be a bit vulgar to say, maybe too offensive or with that. I don't know, but still, I think it's just the fact that I get the argument of trying to have some levity with a subject matter like this, but it's just like, how can people honestly take the subject matter seriously if you just make these like jokes like here and there and all of that? It's just, I mean, especially with like children being victims here, and the fact that again they're spouting out all these like fucking jokes here and there. It's like stop. Like, just stop it. Like, I actually take the subject matter fucking seriously.
That means bit to me as well. I saw that as well.
Ella's worked it all out. She gave us she gave us 2 boxes of chocolates before the show started. She gave Francis the pink one and me the blue one. So she's very perceptive.
I'm white, so I can call you Gammon. That's okay. I can get away with it.
It's a white on white crime, Ella.
Exactly. I know, but we shouldn't laugh. I mean, I've been on Twitter now for like 4 or 5 months and through lockdown, and I've seen how bad it's getting on there. And actually, I've recently left because it's no longer safe for me on there. The anti-fascist activists and the online activists are really, really vicious and really scary. You know, they're doxing people. They've doxed 2 of my friends. They've put their names and addresses online. They put the kids' photographs online. They're harming their children. You know, they've hacked into people's accounts. Not me personally, but I've seen it happen to other people. And, you know, the safety concerns are getting too high now, especially when you see all the anti-white attacks, you know, all the videos that have been coming out in the last few weeks. It's horrible.
Just for people, because most people who may be watching this, they may not be familiar with what you're talking about. So let's just be clear. If I was an ordinary person listening to this interview, I would say, well, of course, Ella is going to be a threat because the Muslims who may have been involved in those grooming gangs may want revenge on her for speaking out or for getting them prosecuted, etc. But you're actually saying, you're shaking your head, people might not be able to see, the threats that are coming to you and the people, you know, you were worried about coming here today.
I was scared to come here
You were scared to come here today. And you were scared
of Antifa.
I just want to take a moment for people to think about that. You're scared because the people on the far left, which is who Antifa is, who are caring, compassionate, and care about victims and minorities and oppressed people, they are the people you're worried about.
The anti-fascists.
The anti-fascists,
Okay.
A grooming gang survivor is worried about anti-fascists.
And our family members are very scared of them. And, you know, it's so out of hand at the moment. It's just really, really dangerous for people. I mean, people are scared to have a Union Jack in the garden. They're scared to, you know, support England in football. They're scared to go out and show any white skin. You know, walking on the street, you know, they'll cover up every single part of them to hide their whiteness. People are really, really worried at the moment. It's very dangerous because the attacks are really bad. But online, I just wanted to come back to the gammon thing because, you know, I get called a Nazi, I get called a fascist, I get called a bigot, I get called an enemy of Islam, which is all lies. I'm not any of those things at all. You know, I'm not anti-Islam, I'm not anti-Muslim, I'm anti-spiritual abuse, if anything. But one of the things that really hurts is being called gammon. And the amount of times that people will say, oh, you're gammon, they'll send me memes, different memes of meat rolling down, you know, meat rolling down a hill, you know, different pictures of pink men.
We said at the start that there's not going to be any humour in it.
But you know, the nickname they have for me is Barry Gammon. You know, they stereotype this pink tattooed, overweight, bald-headed, you know, typical northern Brit.
So at least you're not bald, mate.
Yeah, I know. She was going through all this checklist. I'm
like, that's me. But he's got the better hair.
Even your tattoos are pink.
Yeah, they are. I got told by a dermatologist in Venezuela when my mum was worried about my skin. I know it's a digression. We went to see him. He went to her. There's nothing wrong with your child. He's just a very pink little boy.
Oh,
Anyway,
I agree. Nothing wrong with you whatsoever. It's true. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, the pink meat thing is, you know, we're called easy meat. Yeah, the girls were called easy meat because we're seen as being an easy target that they can pick us up, use us, and throw us away really easily because we're not following the strict Muslim rules where, you know, Muslim girls have to be chaperoned when they go out.
Yeah, Toby, I wouldn't be surprised if her like non-white friends actually do mock her, which I know that may be a sad reality, but I mean that's just the way things are at the moment, aren't they? I wouldn't be surprised if all of her, as I just said just now, I wouldn't be surprised if all of her non-white friends were basically taking the piss out of her because she's white. Most of the victims of this are white, and they have to go through this, and there's never a sense of any real justice or any anger towards what happened, but instead it's just like a sense of defeat. Well, I mean, I'm not racist. I'm not this or that. I don't hate these people. I support charities that support these groups, these communities, and all of that. It's such a clear defeat. It really is a clear defeat, and all of our non-white friends are probably just fucking laughing at her about it. They probably just see her as like a fucking like a purse puppy type of idea where it's like, oh well, we have a white victim here, but we're just gonna make her feel bad because of her whiteness and all of that. They're just taking the piss out of her probably. So anyway, with that,
They cannot look at a man who's not the brother, the father, or the husband. If they look at a man in the eyes, then that means that they're asking to have sex with them. But whereas if a white girl looks at a Muslim man in their eyes, then she's asking him to have sex with him. So these are all the things that I was taught, and believe it. But for all these different reasons that culturally white girls are seen as easy meat. Right. They sing, they listen to music, they like dancing, they drink alcohol. All of this is seen as deeply immoral and worthy of punishment, and the punishment is rape, beating. So,
sorry, Ella, who you say they're taught this?
Yeah.
I haven't read the Quran nearly thoroughly enough to be able to speculate about that. But are you saying they're taught that by religious scholars?
They taught it within grooming gang circles.
Oh, okay. So this is why I want to delineate. We're not saying that Muslims are taught this. You're saying people in grooming gangs.
This is what I would call grooming gang ideology.
Yes.
Okay.
Like you'd say jihadi ideology,
right.
which is different to mainstream Muslim ideology or mainstream Muslim belief. And actually, there's a whole spectrum of beliefs from really, really helpful to loving your neighbor, taking care of the sick, taking care of your children, protecting family, and then right across the other end of the spectrum, which is really, really harmful, which is, bombing people, the 9/11 bombings, the 7/7 bombings, Manchester Arena bombing, and punishing people for what is perceived to be a spiritual flaw or religious digression.
Right.
Honor killings is included in that. So there's a whole spectrum of beliefs, and you get that spectrum within any faith group. When it comes to grooming gang crime, there's like 5 main areas. So it's virginity, purity, modesty, obedience, and marriage. So I will talk about all the different,
But before you do, who teaches them this? This is what I'm trying to get at.
Word of mouth from one person to the next person to the next.
So older generations are training younger generations in this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And does it reside in one particular type of community, or is it spread across a lot of communities who follow Islam? Or
we don't know. I don't know. I think there may be some research that has gone into that, but this isn't something that I know much about. I don't know much about the different divisions. And I would say that this is spiritual abuse. And even in Pakistan, there's a law against using religious scriptures to harm people or to use it to exploit people. Sort of misusing the scriptures, if you like, is illegal in Pakistan. And people can get prosecuted for that. And in fact, the type of gang rapes that you see here that are happening in Pakistan have been prosecuted as terrorist attacks.
In Pakistan?
In Pakistan, yeah.
But not here?
No, not yet. They should be. They very much should be. And rape should be an act of terrorism. And it should be included. And when police are documenting evidence, they should put on there whether this person has links to terrorist groups overseas.
Just real quick from Streaky Bacon. Yeah, she is from. I don't recall ever seeing or hearing anything like that in any other religious groups. It's mostly like Islam you would normally get this type of stuff from with that. Well, at least like from what they're saying, like a specific part of Islam. But anyway, just clarifying that here just for the record for the episode.
Whether they're a returning foreign fighter, whether they are, part of some larger network which is known as a prescribed terrorist group. So it definitely needs to be treated like that now. Yeah.
And you were talking about your experiences, which happened 20 years ago.
Mm.
Are we doing enough at the moment to protect young, vulnerable girls?
Well, that's a whole different thing. And of course, there are lots of perpetrators who are not Pakistani Muslim or Iraqi or Afghan, these types of gangs. There's lots of white paedophiles, there's a lot of online grooming. We're not detracting from those types of offences by talking about one specific type of offence.
Right, I agree.
So one of the reasons that I'm being told to shut up for the sake of diversity,
which is a quote from a Labour MP.
Well, not from her directly. She liked and retweeted a tweet, and she has since said that she did that as a mistake.
Oh,
she didn't mean to do it. Anyway, it happened, and she's not been allowed to forget it. But we've been told to be quiet for diversity for all sorts of different reasons. There are lots of different categories of sexual offenders. Some of them use a completely different model. They don't use the grooming technique, or if they do grooming, there's something called Bernardo's grooming line, which is 4 main stages of like a targeting stage where they identify a victim, and then a friendship stage where they kind of get to know the victim. They get to know, maybe they like puppies, or they like kittens, or they like, and then they'll like football, so they'll give them treats and presents in the line of whatever they like. And then there's like the romantic relationship stage where it goes into boyfriend, girlfriend, and this can be like 20 years age gap difference. Mine was roughly 15 years. And then it'll go into the abusive relationship stage. So that's the grooming line. That's why they call it grooming. It's nothing to do with like shaving and having a haircut and stuff. But yeah, there's all sorts of different categories and different types of sexual exploitation, and that are recognised within the services. And just because I compare it to medicine. So if you've got a cardiac unit, it doesn't mean you don't care about the renal unit, but you treat renal patients with a different way. The way you need to treat those types of diseases is different, and the way that you need to combat it is different to the way that you need to combat cardiac disease.
Yeah.
And so there are different specialisms, and you can't say we're taking resources from one or the other. You want to treat all of it.
Yes, let me get this part. Sorry, folks, one
It's
sec.
important to say this, that it started with Colin Kaepernick taking the knee.
Yeah.
And so some of the people who were taking the knee, particularly in the American context, where the idea of being knighted or other things didn't exist, it was more a sign of solidarity than it was of submission, if you like. The problem is, I think you very rightly say, is when you start making people kneel, when you start saying, as I'm sure would have happened if, the Premier League in this country restarted a couple of weeks back. I'd like to see what would have happened to a footballer who refused to kneel.
I know.
Right? Yeah. And that's where you come into what you're talking about, which is you will kneel.
Yeah.
You must kneel.
You must kneel.
And that troubles me. I'm sure troubles you way more, because you know what that's like, and the psychological point of that. It's domination.
Damaging.
It's damaging, and it's about saying you're down there, I'm up here. So I can see why you feel that way. I can absolutely see how you feel that way. But you brought up the grooming review, the grooming gang review, which the government, the Home Office initiated. They prepared a report. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point. They prepared a report, and that report was ready to be published, and then was not published. Is that correct?
I'm trying to get
Sorry,
to
let me just
part where
just on
where he says about white people shouldn't collectivize. I'm trying to see if I can get to that point
review.
here.
I want to first of all get into that. So your suspicion, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth, so just tell me if any of this is incorrect. Your suspicion is that they're delaying it because they're worried that some of the findings of the review would be used by people to attack Muslims.
Or that they suspect it's inflammatory.
Right.
When really, there's no need to be concerned, because although there may be a few very extreme people who might be inflamed to take action and harm somebody because of that, people who care about the information being made public have heard about this for a long, long time. They do believe that it's racially and religiously aggravated, and with any types of crime, whether it's someone getting punched in the street or graffitiing on someone's house, if there's a racial and religious aggravation element to it, they usually get a longer sentence. It could be slightly longer, or in severe crimes, it can be double the sentence. So, and that's because the impact is
right wing. Why do we use that term to describe people who try and raise this issue?
Well, I'm old enough to remember the Twin Tower attacks, and I think a lot of
it's real. It's real to me. It's very real.
When there was it was a massive shock. I was a medical student training in hospital, and I remember I was working in A&E department, and I remember patients saying to me, pointing to the TV screen and saying, an airplane has just flown into one of the Twin Towers in New York. And I went home, and I was absolutely shaken by it, watching the live footage of the people jumping out of the building, of the whole building collapsing, and I don't know how many people died in it. A horrific
3,000
number, 3,000, a horrific number of people.
3,000.
That shook me personally, because it was bringing back a lot of the feelings that I had being attacked, by essentially Islamists who were religious extremists. So it brought back a lot of those feelings, and from that point onwards, there became this technical war on terror, which was to do something about all the religious extremism teaching that was going on, all the hate preaching that was going on within mosques. And I think that has been successful in many ways, and it has helped to prevent a lot more of those kinds of things going on.
My notice.
Love you guys. I've got so many good men in my life. I cannot agree that all men are misogynists, and I cannot agree that all men are part of the patriarchy. It's just, I can't, that's a different subject.
Sorry, I interrupted you with the you were saying it's coming over from America, which is absolutely right.
There's been this very, and you won't be, I don't see the racist abuse. I'm sure there is some on there, but I haven't really experienced
the convenient label, or do you think there is some truth that was an issue that was taken up by some people who were far right?
Well, I think there's individual cases and individual grievances, and people who are interested in the topic of grooming gangs are very often personally affected by it. So either them or a family member has been a victim of it.
Oops, crap, I did not mean to do that. Ochia-san is in the chat. How you doing, sir? Thank you very much for watching. We're just having a look through, I've talked about grooming gangs. So what we're watching here is this woman was a survivor of the grooming gang scandal. She was, of course, abused horrifically by these perpetrators. And she's basically given her story of what happened regarding to that time. So I hope that might clear things up with that, and we'll continue on from there.
It's men, because there are male victims of grooming gangs as well, of all backgrounds and races. So whether certain individuals have exploited the issue, as people would say, for personal gain, I find that wording, I'm uncomfortable with that particular wording of it, because for people who are fighting for justice and have been fighting for justice for a very long time, who might be seeking funding to get justice,
because they're from a working class background, as in,
yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible question to ask.
Wait, what's the question?
They're probably just normal people, a lot of them.
Yeah. And how much do you think young girls have been deemed expendable because they're from a working class background? As in,
yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible question to ask, because I presume from what I've read, this didn't apply to a lot of middle class girls. These were predominantly working class girls, vulnerable girls. So the authorities therefore thought not as important.
There are a lot of middle class victims. There are, because believe it or not, middle class people get scared and get intimidated just as much as anybody else. So it's really not hard. Once perpetrators picked the victim, they don't really care what a family are like, because they know that they've got guns, they've got weapons, they've got a whole gang of violent people who are going to make threats and intimidate the girl. Even just threatening to kill her dog, kill her cat, she's going to be scared enough to go along and do with whatever they say. Especially if, there's part of a love element in it as well, where she feels like she's loving them and there's some romantic relationship going on. but yes, you're right. There is a lot of there are a lot of victims from working class families. A lot of families that live in close proximity to a lot of these groups where the gangs live. It's impacted them a lot harder, and male family members within groups have been through the similar school system with similar problems with gangs. They've been beaten up, they've been attacked and different things, and stabbed for having a Muslim girlfriend. That type of problem, which all links into the same issue. Or the police are telling them they're called her evidence.
You can understand somebody might harbour some prejudice. I wouldn't put it past myself to harbour prejudice against people who targeted me on the basis of my identity, called me Jewish, this and whatever, right? Or in your case, white. Look, I'm not saying people should go around calling each other packies. I'm not saying that, but if you're the police officer in that situation, you've got to have some idea of balance in the situation.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
But I think again, it's that it's this: if you don't deal with the far left who are branding, it's like you've been tarred and feathered. You've been tarred and feathered as being racist, gammon, Nazi, fascist, far right. Then you are rubbish, basically. So if you don't deal with this issue that we've got, this problem that we've got, this fake branding of people and demonization of white people who are raising this issue, then you're going to get people afraid to deal with it. And that does include police officers. They're going to be afraid of being tarred and feathered. The Judas being tarred and feathered, they're not going to want to be involved in dealing with this, because it's
responsibility, Ella. Your job as a police officer is to investigate and to charge rapists and the people committing these awful crimes.
Yeah, and it's not hard. All they've got to do is say it's a racially and religiously aggravated rape. The perpetrators are the racists.
Yeah,
that's all they've got to do.
Right.
And we don't.
And also equally, the other thing, I mean, even if you are racist, you can still be raped, right? You can be racist and be raped, right? Those are not mutually exclusive things, right?
True,
so even if someone is, use the word packy, I mean, all of this stuff
she may have used that word because they were using that word about themselves. Right. So I don't know where she's got that from.
Yeah.
I just listened to everything you're telling us, and I have no words. I have no words and I don't understand. I think a lot of people would feel that way listening and watching. How is this possible? How have we got to the situation?
Yeah.
And I suppose at some level, the question that a lot of people will be asking, and I know that you work with.
I'll tell you exactly. Well, at least one of the reasons why we got into this mess in the first place is because of liberalism. This idea of, I mean, I know that's not like the main factor of the problem, but partly is to do with liberalism. This idea of we should all, there's no such thing as race or class or gender or anything like that at all. We're all one race, the human race. We should all be compassionate and loving towards each other. And this is where it all fucking got us in the first place. Most of our people are being tortured and groomed by these foreigners. People are being killed because they're white, and at this current time, it's only just getting far more worse and worse and worse, to the point where it's being taught in our educational institutions, or all across all institutions for that matter, but in education especially, it's being taught. Critical race theory is being taught to our children. Well, not. I don't know if it's still with England or Wales, but I know here in Scotland that's being taught over here. It's just only going to get worse from here. It's this idea of liberal values as the way of moving forward, and of course we're all one race, the human race. When in reality, this is what got us in this mess in the first place, and our people are suffering because of that. Our people are definitely suffering because of that.
The government towards it, how do we solve this?
Keep talking about it. There are things that are worrying me, like these diversity, inclusion, and equality panels that are being set up in every company and every business. I think we need to be aware that they must be balanced. They must include the anti-white, anti-Western racism as a form of discrimination that needs to be countered, as well as all the other forms of discrimination. You know, we need to not make it a crime for someone to say all lives matter. And for people not to be persecuted and attacked, even for saying white lives matter. You know, when I saw that banner going over the stadium, I can't help, you know, I did feel loved. That was my reaction. I felt loved. And for people who have maybe just recently discovered that one of their family members believes that all white lives matter, or that white lives matter, and now or one of the colleagues in their department believes that white lives matter, you know, and they're shocked and horrified by that fact, you know, that by that belief. Hopefully listening to people like me, listening to interviews like this, they'll understand that that's not coming from a place of hatred or malice, and it's not a counter attack on the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a parallel justice movement. You know, the justice for the white victims of racism is a parallel movement to the justice for Black victims of racism. And we can do that together, and we can be united together, and we don't have to be split apart or divided in that. We can all be supportive of each other.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that. And then, you know, again, we work in a very woke industry, and I see people sharing books like, you know,
we used to work in a very woke industry.
I haven't been offered one gig for the last few months anyway. It doesn't matter. Fucking.
You're in high demand. Don't worry. In other ways.
But so, for instance, sharing books, you know, like White Fragility, you know, and spreading, you know, the memes and it doesn't help, does it? Really, as to
that particular book, I haven't read it, so I probably can't comment on it. But from what I've heard, it's upholding what I would call grooming gang ideology. So it's upholding the idea that white people are trash, that white people should be punished.
You know, other book that might actually say that the Talmud. Well, despite the fact it does comment more on the goyim or the goys, but I think when they're referring to the goys or the goyim, I think we all know exactly who the Jews are definitely referring to within the Talmud, and I think that'd be white people. And I think that's approaching towards the end of the show, about 7 o'clock. I can't exactly find that comment that this skinny prick made in the video, but I'll see if I can maybe find it afterwards and post it within my Telegram page, which definitely people should follow me on Telegram. I think I'm going to end this episode on a bit of a high note, because I definitely want to make this as a two-parter and not go on to making it like a 3-part episode or anything with that at all. This will be the last time I'll talk about this particular topic if something comes up in the near future. But the purpose of part 1 and part 2 of this is the portrayal of our white children, is that it's something that needs to be talked about. So hopefully people have enjoyed seeing that. I know this is quite a very dark and serious subject matter, but I want to end it on a high note, because I think it has been brought to our attention as of late that people are actually talking about this. And I know that something maybe a bit separate to the matter of being the Drag Queen Story Hour, which I know people might say, well, it's not really exactly the same, but our children are being victims of this utter degeneracy. And I think more and more people are speaking out against it. You know, there's more people going to these local events and actually protesting what's going on. Myself and a few others from PA Scotland went to Glasgow to a freedom march, basically giving out the banner or setting up a banner that reads "Let kids be kids," and all of that. So I think it is being talked about. It's still, and people definitely talking more about this more and more. And I think it needs to be continued to be that way, because the more people know about this, and the more people are actually coming out and standing against it, then I think more people will be more on our side, definitely. So I hope you've enjoyed the past 2 episodes. I know they were quite very very subject matter heavy type of episodes, and hopefully by the next episode it will be a lot more lighthearted, like my previous episodes compared to episodes 91 and 92 or today's episode. But I really hope everyone enjoyed these past couple of episodes with that. So, and we'll definitely go a bit back to being more lighthearted in the next episode, but we'll see with that. What I want to do is let me see if I can find a song, maybe a more hopeful type of song, like an outro type of thing. I'm trying to think what would be the ideal song for that. With that in this case, let me see here. Let me see if I've got something in my music collection. 1 second here. You know what? Might as well. I played this song in the past over and over again, but I think just to have that like hopeful like attitude towards the end, I think I might as well play a song from Hyrith. We'll play a song both by Zurius and Hyrith. We're gonna make it. I've played the song before, but I think it's a perfect song to end these couple of episodes with. So again, I hope everyone enjoyed. I will be back on Thursday, maybe a bit later on than usual. I'll let you guys know in the near future with that. Because again, this coming week from August 1st and onwards, I will be doing a regular job from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening. So the show might start on Thursday, maybe it's slightly later on than usual. But I'll keep you guys posted in the near future for that, for any updates with that whatsoever. So definitely follow me on Telegram with that. I'm going to get these banners up here as well, just in case. And with that, that's going to be the end of tonight's episode of Mood of the Nation. I hope, again, everyone enjoyed. It's been a rough couple of episodes because of the overall subject matter, but I hope everyone's enjoyed with that. So, and with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. This is Chief Moody signing out. You have been watching the Mood of the Nation podcast, and I will see you all in the next episode. Take care, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. Thank you and good night. Take care.
They said don't walk, but we ran. They said don't talk, but we sang. They said don't look, but we saw. Yeah, we saw. The fire rising like before. Oh, oh, we're gonna make it better. Oh, oh, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, we're gonna make it better. Oh, oh, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Oh, oh, they said don't think, but we know. They said don't start, but we said stop. They said don't hear, but we heard. Yeah, we heard. And knew their lives were all absurd. we're gonna make it. Oh, oh, oh.